Now, whoever is elected as the U.S.'s next leader would also have an impact on Africa, despite a generally bipartisan consensus to its policy for decades. Isabel Nakirya in Uganda explains why American polarized politics now have serious implications for the continent.
At this beachfront resort on Kalangala Island on Uganda's Lake Victoria, the U.S. presidential election feels very far away. But the outcome matters for its manager, Tyson Kagwanje. The resort runs entirely on solar energy thanks to U.S. government investment in a solar plant 10 years ago. Mr. Kagwanje hopes that whoever wins the White House will carry on financing projects like these, which have been pivotal in powering Kalangala's transition to green energy.
We really need to put more effort in increasing on our power supply and the power voltage, because we really need to use big deep freezers. We need to use cold rooms. There are certain areas where you find like they have cold rooms, or the room is wired, it has a good power supply which is efficient to help us to store our food for more and more time.
Across Africa, some 600 people lack access to electricity, and renewables are seen as a solution. The move towards sustainable green energy is also an urgent necessity in a continent vulnerable to the effects of climate change. It's estimated that Africa needs $2.8 trillion by 2030 to mitigate climate risks. And its longtime ally, the US, plays a key role. Under the Biden administration, 100 million indirect loans were issued to support off-grid clean energy infrastructure, part of a much larger slate of climate assistance to the continent. The fear is that such programs risk being cancelled should Donald Trump return to the White House.
Make America great again.
The Republican candidate has been skeptical of global warming, and as president, he gutted all U.S. aid funding for climate programs in Africa. In this current campaign, Mr. Trump has made his support for fossil fuels loud and clear, and promised to dismantle many of President Biden's green energy policies.
Those policies or initiatives that seek to address energy concerns or energy challenges in Africa would be curtailed, or at least would not have the same amount of attention if Donald Trump becomes president compared to Kamala Harris, who is a Democrat. And they naturally believe in addressing climate change across the world, including Africa.
As vice president, Kamala Harris made climate change part of U.S. foreign policy, pledging $3 billion to the UN's Green Climate Fund to help developing countries prepare for global warming. On the campaign trail, she has also promised to lead the global effort to tackle the climate crisis.
If you look at Kamala Harris, she is a globalist, she's an internationalist, she's a multiculturalist, and so she believes in international cooperation, she believes in human rights.
But there are doubts as to whether, as president, Ms. Harris will deliver. Analysts note that despite the rhetoric, under the Biden administration, the U.S.-led response to climate change continued to favor wealthy, developed countries. African governments have long expressed irritation at what they perceive as America's unreliability as a partner on issues such as green technology, economic development, and security. As a result, they've turned to countries like China, Russia, and Turkey to close the gap. China, for one, has played an increasingly dominant role on Africa's green transition, supporting Kenya and South Africa in building clean energy plants. Climate change isn't the only issue on the minds of Africans as Americans go to the polls. But it's one global crisis they are hoping the next U.S. president will do something about. Though it remains to be seen if the outcome will spur a positive reset in relations or lead to a greater degree of uncertainty. Isabel Nakirya, CNA, Kampala, Uganda.